Good morning. The government has done well to come up with a 50,000 crore rupee package, an infrastructure creation plus jobs creation package, essentially aimed at the states where the migrant workers have gone back, but states where there aren't enough job opportunities. So this money is to be exhausted over a period of 3 to 4 months. This money is not exactly new money. It's being taken away from existing schemes. To use the Corona lexicon, it's been repurposed. So this money has been repurposed from other government schemes, and it's to be spent over the next 3 to 4 months. Presumably by then, the hope is that some of the migrant workers will have come back to the cities which they left because there are job opportunities there, or there will be some revival and growth. So maybe there's more opportunities in rural areas. As we've been discussing in the past, the government did well not to spend all its money at one go, though that's what a lot of people wanted. Essentially, it makes sense to keep a track on the economy, figure out what is working, what is not working, where are the problem areas, and then give targeted stimuluses, tax relief, reforms, whatever is needed to keep things going, in the economy. Because as we discussed before, the economy is certainly in trouble in FY21. In all probability, the problem will continue into FY22. So the government's job has to be to keep that pain to the minimum. The government has just cancelled a 471 crore contract given by the railways to a Chinese company. The contract has been cancelled for poor performance. It was actually to be cancelled before the Galwan Valley incidents happened. But I think the timing is such that to keep signaling to the Chinese, perhaps the government has decided to put out the news that we're going to play tough as well. If you're going to misbehave in the Galwan Valley, we're going to take action. On your imports, on your businesses here. In fact, our lead column today makes the same point that while cutting off Chinese imports or putting restrictions on them will actually hurt Indian industry, given the fact that China doesn't stick to the plan, given the fact that China doesn't play by the rules, there's no real harm in cancelling a few contracts. It keeps Chinese off guard. In fact, the telecom ministry has told BSNL that in your forthcoming tender, you will have no Chinese companies that will participate in it. And we've even recommended that Huawei, for example, wants to be a part of India's 5G rollout when it happens. So maybe it's a good idea to tell Huawei that it cannot take part in the 5G rollout. Apart from sending a signal to the Chinese, there's also aligns India a little closer to the United States. And frankly, when you've got trouble of this sort, it doesn't hurt to build your alliances, to please your to make some more overtures to your allies. So that's a good thing. The AGR farce continues to be played out in the Supreme Court while the industry remains in deep trouble. The Supreme Court has come down very heavily on the Department of Telecom for issuing demand notices worth lakhs of crores. It's 1.3 lakh crores to Power Grid, 1.7 lakh crore, I think, to the Gas Authority of India Limited. So the Supreme Court has come down heavily on the Department of Telecom for sending these notices to PSUs. Essentially, what the Supreme Court seems to be arguing is that because the Department of Telecom did not want to implement its order on the private telcos, it started sending out these notices to the PSUs, and it felt that it would put pressure on the Supreme Court to cancel the order. That's not true, because actually these notices began long before the Supreme Court order was announced. Secondly, what it does, it really tells you how distorted the Supreme Court order is. The Supreme Court is willing to accept that non-telecom revenues can be added to telecom revenues in the case of the private telcos, but this cannot be done in the case of the PSUs. Now that's quite bizarre. It doesn't make any sense. But I think that's water under the bridge. This is the highest court of the land. An appeal has been filed against the original order. The appeal has been turned down. So you just have to live with it. In a situation like this, there are two things here that the government could have done. One, the government could have come out with some kind of an ordinance which actually negated the Supreme Court order. That didn't happen. The other was that the government could have actually scrapped the license fee and the spectrum usage charge. Now that wouldn't take away from the arbitrariness of the Supreme Court verdict or the Supreme Court ruling, but because the license fee and the spectrum usage charge add up to about 13% of the top line of telcos. By scrapping them, the government would have given significant relief to the telcos. But that hasn't happened either. As a result of this, India will probably now end up with two telecom players, RJio and Bharti Airtel. The government has tried to revive BSNL, MTNL with an 80,000 crore package, but all indications are that the company is not going to turn around. It's still going to be a loss-making enterprise. Essentially, as we've said before, the 80,000 crore was just piece money, or blackmail money, whatever you want to call it. It was money to keep the unions from going on strike. So this makes India a horrible place to do business in. It's very clear that government rapaciousness can kill healthy industries. So that's keeping investors really worried. But at the time when another set of investors continues to pour money in RGO, RGO has just got its latest investor. So at a time when investors keep continuing to pour in money into RGO, I think they've got 1 lakh crore already. So when investors keep running and pouring money into RGO, it's difficult to convince Prime Minister Modi that anything is wrong here. The money coming into RGO, it has to be pointed out, is not coming in because the telecom sector is healthy. This money is coming in for two reasons. It's coming in because investors now feel there is going to be a duopoly. So if there's going to be a duopoly, there's going to be massive tariff increases. So it's not because the sector is healthy. Secondly, the money is coming in because investors feel there's a large e-commerce and fintech play also that they can participate in, and that is why the money is coming in. In fact, on the subject of RGO, there are reports, in our paper today, which essentially say that RIL will buy into the Future Group here. Now, while that's good news for the investors of both companies, it gives Future Group some money and it gives RIL a bigger foot in the retail space. It essentially it shows the hypocrisy of the Indian rules. FDI is not permitted into multi-brand retail. Now that is a bad policy, but that is the policy. And yet the government allowed Walmart, Flipkart, Amazon. It allowed this foreign investment to come into this sector through this fiction called the marketplace model. Now, while some people felt that that should not have been allowed, it looked like a sort of a end around here, in the sense that for domestic political purposes, because of the Kirana lobby, you don't want to actually open up FDI in multi-brand retail because you want to keep the local lobbies happy. But you allowed FDI to come in through the back door and you turned a blind eye to it, because frankly, there is no way that such large amounts of money could have come in without the government realizing what was happening and without these investors informally sounding out the government that they were bringing in this money. So the problem is that that the government turned a blind eye to FDI in multi-brand retail through this. But soon after the billions came in, soon after Walmart spent $16 billion to buy Flipkart, the government started applying the rules. Basically started applying the rules as to what the law said. Now you can't blame the government because it's just following the law, but you can blame the government in the sense that when the investment was coming in, it kept quiet, and then suddenly it decided to act differently. And here's the other problem: Reliance Industry has lots and lots of FDI, and now following the spate of deals, it's going to have even more FDI. So how is it okay for Reliance Industries to have a retail business when it isn't okay for Amazon or Walmart to have a retail business? There is FDI in both cases. So that's something that the government needs to think about. It needs to give an answer. And another question here is, to the extent that the Kiranas are going to be killed by big retailers, that they're not going to be killed, but the belief is that Kiranas will be killed by big retailers. That is why FDI is not allowed. So if that is true, why is it okay for the Kirana to be killed by big Indian players such as Reliance, but it's not okay to be killed at the hands of a Walmart or an Amazon? India finally kicked off its coal sector reforms with the auction of 49 mines yesterday. While that's great news, it symbolizes everything that is wrong with India's reforms, and so it's a good idea to study that in a little bit of detail. First, and obviously, this is a move which has come far too late. It should have happened decades ago, and certainly it should have happened 6 years ago when Prime Minister Modi first came to power. Not just because of what it would do to investments in India, it would create a lot of jobs. So it should have been done long time ago. So unfortunately that didn't happen. That's problem number one when it comes to the coal sector reform there. The other problem is that the reform probably come too late. As the story itself says, the big foreign players are not really interested, because by now coal has become such a bad word internationally. Most of the big standalone mining companies will try and wind down their operations to sort of flog their existing mines, not get into new operations in coal. So the government has essentially timed it completely wrongly, except given the fact that there's still a large amount of coal that's being used in India, whether it's for power plants, whether it's for aluminium plants or or steel, there will be a lot of local players who would be interested in these mines and in the auction of these mines. But there's a related problem, and this is quite similar to the one which concerns the telecom industry, which is how you can kill an industry by having such high levies. So this policy essentially allows people to bid for mines on a revenue share basis. That's the good part. So whatever money you're able to earn from the mine, you give a certain part to the government of India. That's good. The problem is that the other levies, which are also very high, have not been removed yet. So the government of India is actually expecting investors to come in while its levies are so high that it's actually driving investors away. Is PPP back? We have a story here on that suggesting exactly that. It is a sign of how investor interest has been falling in the road sector, that for several years now, there have been virtually no bids on a PPP basis in the road sector. In fact, the risks were so high because investors never got their land and other clearances took forever, that people just stopped bidding for this and they said, we'll just plan to be pure contractors to the NHAI. So the government even modified its PPP route, and it came up with something called HAM, and they tried to attract investors using HAM. That didn't work too well either. So now we have reports that in two stretches in West Bengal, there seems to be some investor interest. So if indeed that's true, then that's very good news. Ratings agency Fitch has trimmed its outlook on India to negative. That's not surprising given the situation after the pandemic, but frankly it's unlikely to move the markets too much, as they were really focused on Standard & Poor and Moody's, in fact more Standard & Poor than Moody's. In order to look more contemporary, Twitter has been trying to experiment with new features over the last few weeks. So it came out with this thing called Fleets, which essentially allowed people to broadcast their thoughts of the day. Other social media have it, so now Twitter also has it. It has just come up with something for iOS for right now. At some point, sooner rather than later, this will also be rolled out for Android. So essentially what it does is, this is for people who found it difficult to cram in all their thoughts into 140 or 280 characters. So instead of typing out those thoughts, you can speak. And you can speak for 140 seconds for right now. Perhaps at some point Twitter will make it 280 seconds. But just imagine what Shankar Mahadevan can do with that. Oof, leaves you breathless. Have a great day. Thanks.